Alright, so here we are once again with another very rare Kiss Information podcast episode. This happens around once in every blue moon, but I'm always happy to do another episode with another subscriber, so that makes it even more special. Tonight I'm joined with, and I have rehearsed this guy's name a lot, certainly before this we started recording, but also last night before I went to bed. Tonight I'm joined with Vic Sherpo Coeta. I hope I got that right because I was practicing for
It's
hours.
actually easier than that. So Shaper, Cotter.
Oh, Shaper
Shaper,
Cotter.
Cotter.
Okay, well, that all of those hours in front of the
Perfect.
mirror are now gone, but I mean that's fine. I mean you live and you learn, I guess. So, let's just for anyone who is listening, because obviously you and I both know how this podcast was set up. But so you reached out to me on Instagram and we had a bit of back and forth conversations. You were talking about passports, you did a European Union citizenship route. So just for people who are not familiar with you or
Right.
your story, because naturally this channel's all about that type of stuff. So what is your story pretty much?
Yeah, so my story is back in 2016, I started gathering documentation to apply for Italian citizenship by bloodline, jus sanguinis. So back in 2016, my grandmother originally comes from Italy. She immigrated to the United States in 1961, and she had my father, who was born in 1962. So that basically makes me eligible for Italian citizenship and my father as well. Dual citizenship as well, because I'm also born as a US citizen. And I really was interested in having EU citizenship, and I had a very direct way of getting it, an easy line, no broken lines whatsoever towards that. And I gathered documentation from my grandmother's side. I got a birth certificate from Italy. My uncle in Italy thankfully helped us with that. And after gathering all the documents, which took like about a few months or so, in 2017 I applied for to get an appointment at an Italian consulate here in New York, and it was about a 3 year wait just to get the appointment. So in 2017, when I heard that my appointment was in April 2020, I said, "Did you say 2020?" And he goes, "Yes, it's a 3 year wait." I said, "Okay, I wish I knew that before I started gathering the documentation back then." And so that's how that was. And then back in April 2020, the pandemic happened, and I wasn't able to attend my appointment in person. And the consulates all over the world were scrambling how we were going to be processing this. And we had mail-in appointments. So I had to mail in the documentation, mail in the €300 fee for both me and my father. We had to mail everything in. And then back in September of 2020, that was when they received everything, definitely. And that was my appointment date. So it was probably 5 months or so delayed. And then after that, it takes 2 years to process it. It's always 2 years, it's always like a fixed time, 2 years. And it took about 2.5 years because things were further delayed. And then I didn't actually get the citizen confirmation in the email, until April 2023. So all in all, it was about a 7 year journey, and that was just me staying stateside. I didn't even That was just mainly 6 years of waiting, 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 but I did get it.
Well, leave it to embassies and immigration departments to come up with a load of bureaucracy. For sure, they'll always find a reason to make it delayed. They'll always find, oh, no, you're missing this sheet of paper. So, believe me, international embassies, immigrations, consulates, they love some good bureaucracy from, not even from time to time, they love it all the time. So, six
I'm not
years,
sure if I
six,
told
seven
you this,
years is
but I actually do
unbelievable.
work. I work in the U.S. embassies and consulates actually stateside, so I am no stranger to bureaucracy.
It must be
It's so true.
shocking. But why? Actually, that's great because then you would definitely know. So, let's say that I am let's say I'm a descendant of someone who's a natural born U.S. citizen, right? and I want to get my US
Right.
passport, and for some reason want to pay tax everywhere I go. And
Hmm.
let's say I submit my documents to you, and to the embassy, and the embassy says, all right, you need to wait 2 years. Why does every country, like the Republic of Ireland is another example, say 2 years? Is it because there's a backlog, or do they just have other stuff to do?
I really have no idea, honestly. It's kind of a cop out for me to say this, but it's not exactly my department, to be absolutely honest. But I think, to my understanding, during that 2 years, they are doing a background investigation on you with the Ministry of the Interior, or in the U.S. we would know this as the Department of Homeland Security.
Yep.
They're investigating you. They're also investigating the veracity of the documents, to my understanding, that you are indeed, that your ancestors have been born in the United States, that all the documents are real. They're also checking the archives, the National Archives in D.C. There's a lot of cross-checking, and of course, with all that cross-checking and interdepartmental work, um, there's a lot of communication that's going back and forth. And when there's more communication, there's more delays in getting a response from said department. So it transfers to the department, to department, to department, to department.
Well, to be
But
honest, that means
it's
that
always that two
if you have
years, though, for some
multiple.
reason. I don't know what it is. It's always set. It's like it seems artificial.
Well, maybe that, but it also sounds like it would be even worse. So, like, you at the time were a single American citizen. You didn't have like a Canadian citizenship or anything else. You just had that American passport. And they still said 2 years. A guy I know from America as well who did Irish citizenship by descent with the foreign birth register took him as well. Also
Hmm.
2 years. So 2 years actually, if you think about
Really?
it, isn't that long of time? Yeah, but it's probably even worse if you have multiple passports. So, let's say you have three passports already before you're applying for it, and let's say you have American, uh, British, and Australian, three non-EU passports, and then you want to get your Italian. It's probably even worse because then they have to communicate with the UK government, the Australian government, who are pretty much 24 hours ahead of everyone. So
Right.
it's like they're spending so much time. It's like, all
Exactly.
right, is this guy legit in England? Is this guy legit in Australia? Is this guy legit in America? Cool. So that stuff, but still, like the bureaucracy. I remember some guy got his. I don't remember what it was. He was applying for a visa somewhere to some Western country, and he got denied for his visa, which also blacklisted him from entering the country for 10 years because he said that he like because of a tweet that he put on when he was a kid. So bureaucratic
Oh,
levels are
wow.
crazy sometimes. But so
Oh,
a
yeah.
lot
A
of
10-year
people in
ban.
America.
That's pretty crazy.
It is pretty crazy. Yeah, it's actually shocking, frankly. It also does depend upon what it was. But if you're a kid, I'd like to think at least that if it wasn't actually a crime, that it should be sort of overlooked. Okay, a 12-year-old put this up. Now, what should we hold this for the against him for the rest of his life? I don't personally think so. But Vic, when I'm
Hmm.
talking to you, in New York especially, some of the major cities in America, such as Los Angeles, you have a lot of diaspora communities. You've got Armenians,
Oh, yeah.
Italians, Irish people, but not
Hmm.
everyone goes to get. Oh, I want to get my Armenian citizenship. Now that might be because of the duties that you'd have to do, but certainly you don't face anything like that in Ireland or Italy. So, do you think it's quite
Right.
rare for people in these American diasporas who to go through what you did to actually get that passport?
Nobody has even heard of it, I think. And I think living in the diaspora of New York, where I think the majority of us are Italian or Irish, actually, it's both Italian and Irish here. Nobody really has dual citizenship. They didn't even think it's possible, even though in Italy, we were able to do this since 1992. It was unheard of. When I developed this idea with my grandmother, she thought I was absolutely crazy. She thought that I would could be abandoning my American citizenship for Italian citizenship, and she was trying to talk me out of it. I said, "No, wait, no, no." That means grandma in Italian. I said, "No, no, wait a second. I can have both, and then not only would I be able to live and work and retire in Italy, there's also 27 different EU countries plus Switzerland plus Norway, plus Iceland, and also the microstates as well. I have a lot of options here. So if I want to do my doctorate in, somewhere in Northern Europe, I can do it for free. That option is open to me as an EU citizen, and I can also work in the United States if I want to as well. So it
Well,
really opens up a lot of options. And also, I'm a blood Italian citizen as well. My last name is German. I also have German ancestry, but back then when I was applying for it, they didn't allow dual nationality. Now they do.
Well, yes, they
But I
do now, and that
digress.
is certainly good. But I would still like if I had the option between Italian or German citizenship, I would also go for Italian as well. Just because I think,
Hmm.
I mean, Germany. You want to talk about bureaucracy? Germany is on the whole.
Uh-huh.
Germany invented bureaucracy. Like, I saw this great video where this Polish guy, he spent his entire life in Poland, born in Poland, raised in Poland, everything. He goes to a German university because naturally it's free there as well. And he showed the difference in paperwork between 18 years in Poland and 6 months in Germany. 18 years in Poland is his passport, his national ID card, um, I guess Polish social security and health insurance. So maximum 5 sheets of paper, right? In Germany, it's about this
Yeah, they
thick
have a
for
binder.
6 months. Yeah, so the bureaucratic levels in Bundesrepublik Deutschland are unbelievable. So I would
Hmm.
definitely have gone for Italian, just like you. But let's say when you're
Yeah.
talking to
The
your
bureaucracy wasn't
friends.
as bad, it's just that it took long.
Well, length is one thing, but it's also a lot better when you have to prove far less as well in order to get what you're actually legally entitled to. So that's another thing. Because frankly, I
I
think
agree.
it does put a little bit of a, and I understand why they do it for national security or what have you. But when they say,
Yeah.
okay, we know that you're entitled to this passport, but we don't think you are, so you have to prove it a lot. Well, I've already proved it with birth certificates and everything else, so surely that should be perfectly satisfactory to any immigration department,
Yeah, and an
as long as
apostille
you're
on top of that
legit.
to certify that it is actually real. Yeah.
Well, exactly, but still, I maintain that what the process you went through, even though actually, I guess it might just be because of the YouTube channel. I've actually been in contact with a lot of people who've gone through that process, but certainly, I still maintain that it's possibly quite a rare thing to do. So, do you have any friends who are also perhaps ethnic Italians, I guess, who didn't really understand why you were doing the process?
I think, no, once I explained that you can have EU citizenship, because I think most people, at least here locally in New York, under the age of 40, know about the European Union and know about the rights and privileges that allows. And if I can do that without going to Italy and without, raising my hand and saying an oath of allegiance or something like that, they thought that was absolutely awesome. And it made them even more proud to be Italian because they allow anybody in Italy, no matter how many generations, as long as it goes back to 1861, which was when Italy was founded, because before 1861 it was like 20 different kingdoms and 20 different
Yep.
countries. As long as it goes back to 1861, you're Italian by blood, and as long as nobody within that lineage has uh, renounced citizenship, Italian citizenship, within that period of time, then you're Italian. And that was pretty awesome because I think even in Ireland and a lot of countries, they have like a two-generation limit, I think.
Yeah, Ireland goes up until the grandparents, and actually that's really unfortunate because I knew a guy who was technically he could have been recognised as Irish by blood. Born in
Hmm.
UK, parents born in UK, grandparents born in UK, but great grandparents born in Ireland. And pre 2005, Ireland had citizenship by birth, just as you do in America, Canada, and most, if not all, of Latin America. So Ireland had a similar policy
Yeah, by
before
slang.
2005, and even though it was only his great grandparents born, his parents could have got Irish citizenship by descent through the grandparent line, and if he was under 18 when they
Hmm.
naturalized, he could have got it immediately as well. But sadly, they only started checking in on it when he was 17, and the 2 year process he would have been 19, so he did get the
Oof.
cut-off point, which is unfortunate. Like, I did tell him, look,
Oh
if you're
man.
really desperate for it, just move there, do the 5 years, because of the Good Friday Agreement and the Common Travel Area, it's an open border policy with the UK. So if you're really desperate, just thug out 5 years in Ireland and see how you like it, and then get the passport that way. But
Right.
it's still a lot better if you can do it through your process, even though it was pretty much the same time. You didn't have to relocate to Italy. If you don't, out
Right.
of curiosity, do you speak Italian?
I do, but my German is better. My Italian is around an A2 level. I do speak a mixture of Italian and English with my grandmother because she has been living here for 60 years, actually, but more than that now. But I don't really practice that much because she does live in Florida. I live in New York. It's about a 2.5 hour flight away. We see each other once a year. But last time when I was in Italy, I have done a course in Florence about 15 years ago. And that's where I really polished my Italian a little bit. I would say my Italian is A2, my Spanish is A2, and my German is B1.
Well, you are certainly very diversified linguistically, then, which I'm always very happy to hear. I actually just recorded a couple of conversations just like this with some linguists, and I always love to hear people say that they can speak multiple languages. I personally can too, only too fluently, and I guess I
Especially
could
here on
put.
this side of the Atlantic.
Well, maybe actually, yeah. If you go out of a state like Florida, where there's a lot of Spanish speakers, it is probably quite rare.
Oh, right,
Yeah.
right, exactly. And there's a lot of first generation Americans that have immigrant parents who are Spanish speaking in the household, and they can speak it just as well as uh, as the parents, almost like a native.
Well, that's the beauty of educate. That's the beauty of actually learning the second language. So I remember I was having a conversation with someone who said that they were from one of the Baltic countries. I don't quite remember which one of the three, but they said that one of their
Mhm.
parents was from one of the Baltic countries that used to be in Soviet Union, but then it got independence in 1991. And I said, "Oh, so do you speak Latvian, let's say, it might have been Latvia," and she said, "No, my mum is from Latvian, but I never learned it." I'm like, that's such a shame, because even though Latvian isn't really practical
It
internationally,
is.
it would still be quite good to be able to speak a second language.
Especially with family that still live over there. I have a lot of relatives that live in Germany that don't speak English, because they're children, but the adult relatives speak English. And I also have relatives in Italy who don't speak English as well. So to have that common language, whether it was with Italy to speak with my family in Italian or to speak German with my relatives in Germany, you have that connection. And I assume that they probably still have family that's living in the Baltic as well, in the Baltic countries. But I had a friend that's from Estonia. Well, he's Estonian, but his parents are from Estonia. But they speak to each other in Estonian, but he never learned it. And I asked him, how is that possible? And he goes, well, I think it's because my parents wanted to have their secret language talking to each other so they could talk smack behind my back.
But that's, I mean, jokes wise, fine, but that's still quite a unfortunate thing. I mean, I guess what he could do is he
Yeah.
could learn Finnish, and there's a little bit of a connection there. So he could learn Finnish
Oh,
and
yeah.
go, yeah, I don't necessarily speak Estonian, but I can still understand everything you're saying. It's kind of like, I remember I was speaking to some Dutch people, and they said we can understand everything a German says, but a German can't understand anything we say. Same principle with the Portuguese and the
It's true
Spaniard.
because I do speak
Yeah.
a little bit of Dutch because I go to the Netherlands so many times and I visit friends over there. And even when I'm learning the numbers, even when I say a number in Dutch, I say that to a German person and they're like, huh?
Yeah, no,
Like,
that
let's say the number
I
27, like in Dutch off the top of my head, it's 27, but in German it's 27.
yeah.
You see how it's interchangeable?
It is interchangeable, but then also like I think because this is an ongoing joke in the England in certainly in the UK, I guess in neighbouring countries with the Netherlands as well. But Dutch reminds me a little bit of Hebrew in a way where there's a lot of sounds, and you just hear that all the time.
Hmm.
Anytime you hear
Yeah,
it, you
and the
always, all
is
right,
like with
they're
a G.
Dutch. Yeah, certainly. Yeah, it's sort of like a Cyrillic. Well, what for us Latin readers, if you know Cyrillic, it's the X letter that looks
Yes.
like an X, but it's
Yeah,
actually a
exactly.
ch.
Yeah, I studied
Yeah,
Russian in college.
Oh, well,
Hmm.
great. Well, then
Right.
we're going to be having a very good conversation about languages because there's anything I love more than passports, it's languages. So this is actually perfect, and I'm
Oh,
getting blown
awesome.
away every second. So that's great. So you really are a
Yeah,
diversified
I
guy,
studied
Vic.
Russian in college. Yeah, and I also studied Japanese for a year at Sheffield University as well. I've also studied abroad in the UK, and that was the most fun I've ever had in my life. And that was back, you're gonna laugh your ass off. That was when a pint was £2.30.
Okay, I mean, to be honest, as far as it go back for me, as far as it goes back to me, because believe it or not, when I was six, I wasn't checking the inflation rate of alcoholic beverages. I was more like, okay, so a chocolate bar called a Freddo. I'm sure you must have had it if you were in. It was only 5p in England. That's how I remember it when it was 5p, and now it's like 125. It's crazy. Like, there's no point in even buying it anymore. So certainly has gone up. I don't even know how much a pint of any alcoholic beverage would be now. Well, I'm a teetotalitarian or whatever that thing is. I'm not a totalitarian, not a dictator, but the
Totalitarian.
yeah, the people that don't drink. So, but I mean, it has gone up crazily. But just with languages, you seem to be quite like me in a sense that you've got multiple passports, you speak multiple languages. This is the type of people who I want subscribed. If I was to like curate like the subscriber group that I'd want, like you're 100% there, and I appreciate that you are because it means that I've curated it well.
Thank you. I'm very happy to hear that. Yeah, absolutely. Because part of having an EU passport and EU citizenship, you can actually go to these countries and learn the language in person. And I did exactly that in Italy. I've done that twice in Germany. And I've to the point where I'm at least at B1 level. I'm thinking about maybe even going back next year just to do it recreationally while also working remotely. And I also did that 6 years ago when I was working in Madrid at the embassy over there. And in the morning, I would have a private Spanish class. And that's how I went from A0 to A2 in a relatively short amount of time in 2 months. So learning the language when you're there in the wild is the best way to learn it possible. And if you've ever been to Madrid, most places in Spain, maybe Barcelona is a different story, or especially if you go to Ibiza. But I digress. But if you're in Madrid, I found that my lack of Spanish, I was immediately handicapped. As when I would be ordering, they would say, "Hablas español?" I was like, "Oh, geez." So then I had to rely on Italian for like a couple of weeks, and then they understood.
Yeah, well, I mean that is kind of the situation in many places you go because, there is always that thing where people from the Anglo-speaking realm expect that everyone speaks English. And I guess I can kind of understand that why, because it is still technically sort of the international language of the world. But I
Yeah, the
also
international
understand
language
the
of business.
arguments
Yeah.
that the oh yeah, 100% business definitely, and I do understand the argument that certain people from Paris make when they say, "Oh, but when you come to Paris, you should speak French." And I understand that point, but then I also think, okay, fine, but if you're going to
Right.
Tibet, are you actually going to learn Tibetan? Like, are you actually? If you go to Bhutan, only
Ballpark.
speak Jonga, then cool, yeah, fine. But which actually is it's a cool language. I'd love to be able to speak it, but first of all, I'm not paying that
Yeah.
daily tax. No way in hell. I'd rather get an Indian passport and enter that
Oh,
way,
wow.
or like I would actually just be able to learn it like that if I could like take a pill or something. But I do understand both arguments for it. But I agree with you completely. It's that immersion in a language which is really helpful. And actually, one thing I found was that when I was traveling around Europe as well, even the language that I don't speak. We take German as an example. I'm not clued up in German. I can count to 20 in German. I can maybe order
That's
something
a
in
good
a
start.
restaurant in German, but that's pretty much it. Like nothing else. I can't talk about ancient Greek philosophy in German or anything like that. So
Oh,
that's
geez.
pretty
Yeah,
much my
exactly.
level. But even when you're driving through Germany and you start to see even signs or you listen to German radio, you can start to pick up on some words. So immersion is like the ultimate
That's
hack, in
true.
my opinion. I'm curious what you think.
It really is because when I think I studied a little bit of Italian in high school for 4 years, believe it or not, because here in my school district, you had the choice of four languages. You had the choice of Um, Spanish, which the majority of people took, French, Italian, and sign language, which is very interesting. Not most schools don't even have a choice of three, let alone four, or sign language. So, oh, and Latin actually a fifth. You can
Yeah.
even do that on top of beyond the 4 years. There was also an optional extra 2 years of Latin, but I didn't do that. And when I studied Italian for 1 month in Florence, living with an Italian host family, having a teacher teach me Italian in Italian who did not know English, it actually worked out a heck of a lot better than I thought. And I learned Italian faster in 1 month than I did in 4 years in high school.
Well, I think, when I hear that, that
That's
isn't surprising
that's
at
my
all. Well, it's not surprising at all. That's actually a educational strategy that I believe, and I'm not too sure how accurate I am on this, but countries like Japan and South Korea, they have these visa programs for English speakers, for native English speakers to go over there and teach English there for maybe a year or two. Now,
the JET
they don't
program.
just give it out to people
Yeah, that's
who,
the JET program.
okay, the JET program, but I can't imagine they only give out that visa to people who, let's say you're applying to South Korea, that you have to speak Korean, because I think far too many people do it, and I don't think that many people are learning Korean before they arrive. So that does seem to be the tutoring
Mhm.
strategy, that you have a native English speaker going to Korea teaching English there while also not speaking Korean to the Korean students. So that could definitely certainly help, and I think it's a great strategy. And actually, it's one unfortunate thing that I have found with more minority languages, I guess you could call it. We take a language like Navajo, which is technically a language in the United
Oh, that's
States.
a really good one.
It's a very
Yeah.
good language, but sadly, you have it on some platforms like Duolingo, maybe some online forums, but it's just not taught in a satisfactory level. So even if you are interested in learning it, you get to a point where you go, these resources just aren't good enough, and they don't compete at all with Japanese or Korean or Mandarin Chinese or
Mhm.
Italian or German. So I do understand where the incentives go. Naturally, it's also a bit more of a productive language if you're looking for global travel. But I can also understand that because
True.
these languages are have more resources in their teachings, that also that's the reason why more people go towards learning those languages.
That is true. Yeah, in Japan, I think I studied Japanese recreationally, in college and also a little bit on my own. And their textbooks are so good at teaching basic Japanese, like all the way up to maybe the intermediate level, not the advanced as much. I think there's a series called Genki,
Yeah.
the Japanese textbook series, and that is they have comics, they have um, so many entertaining ways to learn the language, and it's really good. They also teach you how to write, read, and write hiragana, katakana, and the kanji. It was very effective. There's a lot of resources. I think I have a book in my closet, like how to memorize the thousand kanji characters, and it kind of they break it down in such a way that you can remember it, each of the parts of the kanji. Um, like for example, originally kanji comes from pictures, and there's like something like sun, right? And then there's moon, and if you put sun and moon together in one character, it means bright.
Okay.
Just off the top of my head, if I remember correctly, my Japanese and my kanji especially is rusty, but you get the picture. So there is a lot of I found that there's a lot of resources for Japanese for English speakers at least. Compared to German, it's actually a little bit hard to find good German resources besides Duolingo. Uh, Even though German is like I think there's 120 million native speakers who speak German compared to about the same in Japanese.
Yeah.
I find that
Well, it might
strange.
it might be because thinking about it, like Japan has, and this is very stereotypical, but they have the comic series, like you mentioned. They also have Japanese
Yes.
anime, but German, I mean, there might be some Austrian telenovela that some people like to watch, but they're certainly not as popular as a Japanese anime show would be. Certainly not in the Western world. Like, I feel like Germany is a lot more homogenous in their media than Japan, because one thing that I've seen is, and I don't know that much about Japan, but I know their media. Same thing with Korean. Everyone's heard of K-pop. No one's, and I guess you
Of
could
course.
also argue that you've heard of German dubstep because Germany is quite a good DJing scene, but it's still not
Oh,
as
it
big
always
in
has
my
been for a
opinion.
while, yeah.
Yeah, it definitely
But
has
it's
been, and I
usually, but
think
with
it
German
goes well.
dubstep and the electronic music, that's in English anyway.
Yeah. Well, there you have it. We take and that's actually one thing that I've noticed in the Scandinavian countries as well. You have a lot of talented artists coming out of countries like Norway, Sweden, but all of their songs are in English. We take someone like Alan
Yeah,
Walker from
Alan
Norway,
Walker
although he is a
at
exactly
the same time.
yeah,
Yeah.
Alan Walker. He is also a dual UK Norwegian citizen, but we take another one like Zara Larsson from Sweden, or Galantis, I believe, are also somewhere from there. All of theirs are in English as well, or at least most of them are. So that's what I think Japan has a little, and Korea certainly have going better for them, is that they've made their media products go out to the world, and they haven't forced themselves to subtitle it. They go, do you know what? If they like it, they'll find a way to watch it and understand it.
It's really true. Yeah, it's crazy how the anime industry and the media industry made its way into Korean and Japanese teaching materials.
Yeah.
No, I don't know any other language that does it like the way how they do it.
No, neither do I. I
I
think
think
the
we
only
have to learn
example that I
Mandarin.
could think of would possibly be Spanish if we take telenovelas, Latin American telenovelas.
Oh,
But
that's true.
uh,
Yeah.
again, it could be argued that they're not as popular, because I feel like everyone's heard of the Seven Deadly Sins or some other anime, but has everyone heard of?
I
I
like that
can't.
one.
Well, good. I'm personally not too big on anime, but my friend in America is, so that's the one that I do know. But is everyone who's learning Spanish clued up on Isaura, which I don't know where that soap opera was from, but it was a very big one in Eastern Europe for some reason, and
Oh, that's
people use
interesting. I
that
don't know.
to learn Spanish. And actually, there's a funny story with that I tell people because Isaura, I don't. She could have been Argentinian, but I couldn't tell you off the top of my head which country the show originated from. But it was definitely a Spanish speaking one. And in Hungary, it was a huge show. It was like a huge success, right? And in the show, something happened where the main character, like the girl, like the beautiful woman, was kidnapped. People were setting up charity donations to help get her rescued because they thought that it happened in real life in Hungary. So a bunch of Hungarian people were like donating their own money to help this fictional character get released from being kidnapped. So that story to me is always one that I find hilarious.
Oh man, when did that happen?
Like 20 years ago, I think.
Uh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, it's messed up though, but it's just take me on your story, Vic, because I certainly rarely ever meet a lot of Americans who are so big on language diversification. So far, I've
I'm the
met
only one I
Dr.
know.
Arguelles. Yeah, and so far the only Americans that I know that are big on language diversification is you and Alexander Arguelles. So those are the only two, but you find it so rare in the English speaking world to find people like yourself who have learned Japanese, Russian, Spanish, German, Italian, and there are some ancestry purposes there. But where
There's
did
one
this
that I'm
whole
missing.
spark come? Where did this whole spark come for you to learn all these languages?
I think it came out of selfish reasons, honestly, because my Italian relatives would speak Italian. More accurately, they'll be speaking a dialect of Italian from southern Italy called Napoletan, which is in the Naples area. So they'd be speaking that. And of course, with my relatives from Germany, they'd be speaking German. And I kind of had to take it upon myself to learn these languages to speak to them. And then, of course, I had friends that grew up speaking different languages in their house. I had a friend that spoke Arabic with his parents, and I wanted to understand them. So I started at 12 years old speaking Arabic, but that language is so damn hard. I didn't have the patience to really even start to learn it. I'm like, whatever, I'm done. And I got into teaching myself Russian at first in high school because I really was interested in Russian electronic pop, especially like Tattoo. They only had, at the time, they were singing only in Russian, and I wanted to understand the lyrics, and I started teaching myself that. And then all of a sudden, I met a friend who is originally from Russia, but he moved to the US when he was two, spoke Russian fluently. So lo and behold, I had somebody to practice with a little bit at an elementary level. And then after that, I went to college, and then I wanted to learn Japanese because maybe I got into the J-pop. I think maybe I also was interested in playing Final Fantasy in Japanese and pretending that I understood what was going on. I would change the language settings. Like I think in The Sims, even back in the time when I was in high school, I played that in German, even though I didn't really understand it. But that's how I started learning at least a little bit.
So, media consumption seems to be the way to go for you. I mean, just your anecdote on the Russian language, I actually
Especially
find some
video games.
relatability. Oh, well, that's great. If only
Yeah.
hill climb racing was an Italian, I'd be the most fluent Italian speaker by now. Because I don't play it anymore, but I was super rich on that game back in the day. I was earning in-game currency when I should have been studying for my exams. That's how dedicated I was. If only it was
Yeah.
in Italian, I could have mastered that. But I mean, just with the listening to media and with the songs, I'm totally with you. Like one thing that I do is I memorize the lyrics of a song phonetically that's in a foreign language. So I have no idea what I'm saying. I have no idea what any of it means. But at least now I can sing it. You know, we take a song like Sudna by Malta Domi. You know, they go El Mali Rovona Sudna Okoshko Tumbashka Krovat Jitijelo Inyayutno. So I have no idea what any of that means, but
Oh, the
I've
Molchat
memorized it.
Doma. Yeah, I know
Yeah,
them. Yeah, that's Sudna that you're singing.
yeah, it is. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I memorized their lyrics. I memorized some other ones, but in Nikokdanya Umeret, Nikokdanya Umeret. I actually do know what that means, but that's one of my strategies.
That means "and never die."
Yeah, never die. Yeah, 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 yeah. So that is one of my
Mhm.
strategies. So shout out to Molka Doma as well. So great. It's not a language that I'm
Yeah, they're
currently learning,
legends.
but when I was going big on learning the Cyrillic alphabet, because that was my key. That was my key. Not life purpose, but sort of what I was really aiming to do, and I found that these songs would help me learn that. And now I write. I accidentally wrote one of my exams in English, but using the Cyrillic letters by accident. So to this day, I have no idea how they were able to grade that. But whoever graded that, I apologize for that nightmare you went through. But it was probably worth it. But I mean, we seem to have some similar tastes in music. We both mentioned Alan Walker at the same time, Morkat Doma. I'm not going to say any more references because if we both say the same, then that's going to get super super crazy. It's like we're the same dude. So that's that that's actually unbelievable. But shout out to Sudna, great song. So outside of Italian and German, would you say
Yeah.
that
There's also other
Spanish
songs.
is
That whole album is great.
It is, yeah, it is, yeah. Outside of Italian and German, would you say that Spanish is the next foreign language that you speak the best?
No, I would actually say that my Spanish is probably maybe a little bit better than my Italian at this point because I use
Oh,
my Spanish more when speaking to my Mexican and South American colleagues, when I'm talking to the embassy managers and the consulate managers who run the visa appointment system. All of them are Mexican nationals. They speak to each other in Spanish. And I actually understand the Mexican accent much better than the Spain Spanish accent. That's more familiar to me.
well
So I
then,
think
well then
probably
maybe
just by hearing them speak, they speak to me in English. I respond in English, but they speak to each other in Spanish, and that's how I'm learning a little bit through osmosis.
maybe as a final boss, Vic, if we talk about it in video game terms, you should go to the Chilean diplomats because apparently the Chilean dialect is one of the toughest ones to understand for foreigners. So if you can master the Chilean dialects and be able to understand the Chilean speak English, because that's what I've heard. Apparently, I think that's the final boss of all Spanish.
I disagree because I understand the Chileans pretty much okay, but the worst I find are the Dominicans. To me, it just sounds like waka kaka kaka waka kaka waka kaka or something like that. The Dominican Republic Spanish, that seems alien to me because there's a
Actually,
lot of
Dominic.
sounds that they cut off. They cut off the S, they cut off like vowels in the middle. It's almost like a language in itself.
Well, with the Dominican Republic, I remember when I moved to America as a young kid, I befriended one guy called, what was his name? I don't remember his name, but he was from the Dominican Republic. His name was Johan. Johan. He was from the Dominican Republic,
Oh
and I
wow.
was friends with him for one day, and I never heard from him or saw him ever again. So wherever Johan from the Dominican Republic is, who went to school in Florida, shout out to you. So probably a great guy, although he might not be. So who knows where he is now. But I agree, like this whole
Yeah.
speaking a foreign language so that you can speak with your friends who do come from different backgrounds is also crucial. And also, for international work, like you said, when you were in Spain working at the Spanish consulate, perfect time to learn Spanish, by the way. Yeah, I mean, the stars must have
Oh yeah.
aligned for you then and there. Is there any other language that you haven't yet studied, Vic, but one that you kind of have on your list that if you ever have the time, you'll get round to?
I'm very interested in Portuguese. I can read Portuguese pretty well um, because of my Spanish and my Italian background in that language. So Portuguese I understand, but when I'm hearing it, I really don't understand that. So and also um, Portugal is a beautiful country to live in. The food is great. Of course, they have a very open visa and immigration policy. And also, a lot of people want to get Portuguese citizenship. It's a pretty prestigious country to work abroad in and to work remotely in. And the people are very friendly. I've always wanted to go to Portugal, check that out. I mean, I was in Spain. I don't understand why I didn't just, take a 45-minute flight to Lisbon. But I digress. So Portugal would probably be the next one. Oh, and also you have Brazil, which is a massive country, over 200 million people. That's Portuguese speaking. And that is the third most commonly spoken language in the Western Hemisphere. So that also is a big language as well. And we also do visa services, my program in Brazil and in Portugal. So I'm hearing Portuguese and I'm also reading documentation in Portuguese and, you know, sending them off for translation uh, in Portuguese. So when I'm reading through that, I'm like, hey, I basically understand at least half of this. So this seems like an easy language to pick up. But also, I'm afraid to get confused because sometimes when I'm speaking Italian, my Spanish comes out, and vice versa. So if I learn Portuguese, I'd be speaking a Creole of these three languages.
Well, that is the curse of being a speaker of many foreign languages, even languages that you haven't mastered. It happens sometimes. So I remember I was speaking to someone in English, and I don't speak Finnish very well at all, but for some reason, I did a deep dive for about 6 months on the Finnish language. I have no idea why. I don't remember much of it now. I remember some stuff, but I was talking to this guy in English, and I'm saying, yeah, so that's a very nice koira, koira, koira. What is koira in
Dog.
English? Koira. Uh,
I understood
oh,
that as dog.
yeah, it is. Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
only
And then
know
I
that
went, all
because in
right.
Estonian is square.
Well, they're very similar. Then it's the same as terra and terve. It's just like those are the
Ah,
greetings.
yeah,
So
yes, yes, yes.
yeah, so and then I went koira, kutya, no, kasho, no, cat, no, dog, dog. Okay, but then even languages that I didn't speak necessarily fluently. I'm not fluent in Finnish or Portuguese either. I had to go. Those came to my mind first.
Mhm.
Or I remember when I was learning Latin, that was the first language that I ever actually studied beyond the two that I sort of spoke growing up, that I studied myself. After I did Latin, Latin always stuck with me. And even though it's sort of disappeared now, the maximum stuff I could do is introduce myself to someone and perhaps barter in a street marketplace. But I don't know how realistic that is since we don't live in 200 AD anymore. But those are the only stuff that I could
Yeah,
probably do
exactly.
in
That sounds like
Latin.
something from a Doctor Who episode.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, so if you ever invent a time machine, Vic, let me know and I'll see how far I can get in ancient Rome. with Latin.
Sure,
I'll
I'll
see
just
how
call
far I
up
can
Elon
get.
Musk right now.
Yeah, yeah. Please do. Well, I called him. He said he'd call me back, but he didn't. So what can you do?
Yes.
But yeah, but no, but like languages impress me so much, and I guess it's a tough one to talk about languages because it's hard to say it in a way that monoglots could understand it because your mind works totally differently. Have you ever have
Hmm.
you ever had anything happen where you're thinking in your head, and do you ever think in all these different languages, or do you only think in English when you're thinking in your head?
When I'm very aggravated and PO'd about something, I actually start cursing in Italian because that's how I grew up. As a matter of fact, just in my kitchen, I'm looking at a mappina, for example. That's what I call it in English and in Italian, but I think I have to really. I had to think of the word. Like when I was studying abroad in England at Sheffield Uni, I said to, my friend who's from Yorkshire, from Leeds, I was like, hey, pass me the mappina over there. I got to clean up the dishes. And he goes, what? Where do you see a mop? I said, no, not a mop, a mappina. That thing over there. Oh, you mean the dish rag? I was like, oh, is that what you call it in English?
Well, fair enough. Although to be fair, I wouldn't blame it because England is a country that has many different dialects everywhere you go. It's actually a miracle that people from Yorkshire and Liverpool and Newcastle can understand each other because it does get hard.
I
England is
agree
like the
completely, yeah.
dialect capital of the world. There's so many dialects in that tiny half split of the island. It's unbelievable how many dialects there are. Someone from Bristol sounds totally different to someone from London than they do from someone with Cornwall, Liverpool, Newcastle, Manchester, Yorkshire, like you
Scotland's like
said.
that too,
It's
by the way.
Yeah, Scotland is as well. I mean, I pray for anyone who even tries to understand the Glaswegian accent. I mean, good luck to you. You're gonna need it, bruh, because the accents from
Yeah,
Glasgow are,
exactly.
in my experience, the
But if you
toughest
want to
ones.
give up, But if you want to give up, you can just take a train to Edinburgh, and you'll be pretty much understanding there because the Scottish accent is much softer. And if you can't understand that, then just go up to Aberdeen, where everybody speaks English, almost the Queen's English, RP, because that's where the oil is. That's where the oil workers are.
Aberdeen, it's unbelievable that you've brought up that place. I was there. I was there not too a couple of years ago, I think. And Aberdeen is actually a very cool place. What surprised me about Aberdeen is, you take a look at Hawaii, and it has nice beaches. You think, okay, the north of Scotland, you can practically wave to the Norwegians across the North Sea. You'd expect that it wouldn't have nice beaches. It does. Now, yes, the water temperature is not good. No palm trees, nothing, but nice white sandy coastlines. They're up there in the
Yeah.
edge north of Scotland. So that to me was really surprising. I don't know if you've ever actually been to Aberdeen yourself, to that coastal area, but it's unbelievable.
Oh, you don't even have to go all the way up to Aberdeen because I took a train from Edinburgh down to Sheffield just this past May, and while crossing the Scottish and the English border, I looked out through my side and we were going through the coast, the beach, and it was a bright sunny day and it was white sand beaches and it was like clear blue water and I couldn't believe it. I was looking out the window like with my jaw open. I was mesmerized by it.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
this is
Well,
after coming back from Loch Ness a couple of days before that, and that water is pitch black. It's like you're going through black paint, which is beautiful in its own right, actually, in a different way.
to be honest, Scotland in general is it's an underrated part of the UK, and I'm not too convinced on the UK as like a
Agreed.
country where you want to live for the rest of your life. But Scotland is like, it's a lot calmer. There are far less people there. They're a lot nicer too. It's actually weird. English diplomacy is more prevalent in Scotland than it is England, which is quite interesting because you wouldn't think that, but it is. The Scottish people, in my experience at least, are far more diplomatic in their approach to things, which I do appreciate a lot. But I think, just Europe again, this is what we talked about. You have your Italian passport now. You could go to Italy, you're an Italian citizen. You could go to Malta, you could go to Portugal, you could go to Spain. You could go all the way up to Rovaniemi in Finland if you wanted to. I don't know why, if you would want to, but if you want to meet Santa Claus, there he is apparently. So
Well, what about to visit
you,
Santa Claus? That's where he lives.
yeah, but like that's the beauty of Europe. I'm curious, Vic, because you said that you wanted to have that access to be able to retire in Europe if you wanted to. Do you have any country on Europe that you're sort of looking at where you think maybe I want to live there for a little while?
Well, oof, I'm actually split between multiple different ones. I would say for the weather and for the food, either Spain and Portugal, the Iberian Peninsula, haven't decided
Yep.
which one. I also, even though it's not an EU country, I could live there. Maybe just a little bit of paperwork, but I could live there, Switzerland, because
Yep.
I mean, you can everything works to precision over there. It's really true. The rumors are true. Not, the trains are not late, and you could literally go from the city center of Zurich to the mountains in 20 minutes. You can take a train right to the mountain, almost go all the way up. It's peaceful. The scenery is great. Food is also good. It's also very multicultural as well over there. It's expensive, but the taxes are low. But so you have to save up a little bit. No capital gains tax or anything like that. Belgium is another one. No capital gains tax as well. Czech Republic, no capital gains tax. And it's also on the cheaper end. And I love Prague. Oh, there's so many to choose from. It's crazy.
Well, I've personally never been to Switzerland. I have been to Belgium and Czech Republic. I like Czech Republic. Belgium, I have a history with. I'm not too fond of that country, although I don't know if that's just
A
a
lot of people say
UK.
that. A lot of people.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, you know it's bad when even the license plates look bad. Like that's how Finnish that country is. When their license plates on cars are a bad design, you know they've given up. Like Belgium, in my opinion, has given up as a country because they can't even do a good looking license plate on a car anymore. The roads aren't great. They're even better in France, which is unbelievable. So Benelux for me,
Mhm.
I'm not too convinced on, but the Czech Republic is goated. The Czech Republic for me is like if Vienna was a little bit cheaper. That's what Prague is
Thank you.
like for me. Yeah.
Exactly. It also is very international too. I visited my friends, and not only did we have Americans that have lived that have moved there, we have a lot of people from English-speaking countries. We have Germans, Italian, Spanish, Portuguese, English as well, Irish, and we also have people from Ukraine and Moldova and Russia who have moved there for work. So, in a lot of different respects, in Prague, Czech Republic, I mean, America isn't America anymore with the immigrants. America is Central Europe. I couldn't believe it.
Well, it's also like, I mean, I'll be
Very
honest, I do like
multicultural.
Prague. I do like Prague, and I do agree it is that. But I also, I'll be honest, I do prefer. I don't know if you've been here, but I do prefer Budapest, Hungary. I prefer Hungary in general in many things. There are some stuff
Mm.
that I absolutely can't stand about
I
it, but
know.
some, but so definitely go if you get a chance. Like if you're ever in Europe and maybe you have like a spare couple of days or maybe a week or so, I definitely recommend Budapest. It is one of the best places on earth, genuinely. Like, yes, it sucks they don't have a coastline anymore. They don't have a beach, fine, but there's so much to do in Budapest. It's super affordable. It's cheaper than Prague. The only thing that you would possibly have trouble with is that maybe not a lot of people speak English, although with the younger generations that isn't that much of an issue. But Budapest is
Like if
a
they're under the age
is
of 40, maybe they speak English.
yeah, yeah. Well, I'd say anyone under the age of 60 probably does, but if they're born in like the 60s,
Oh,
then
okay.
chances are
Better.
maybe not. But if they were sort of the way I like to put it this way, if they were teenagers when it democratized, then chances are they do speak English. If they were in their 30s when it happened, then maybe not. But if they were a little bit younger, if they were sort
Huh?
of growing up when it changed, then maybe. But otherwise, like it's such a cool place. It's such a cool place. And another two that we haven't spoken about is Greece and Cyprus. Cyprus for me, one of the best places on the planet.
I heard. And also, you don't have to bring a power adapter either. It's all UK plug sockets. The best plug socket in the world.
It is the best plug socket in the world, and it's absolutely true. Anyone who knows international plug sockets, I mean, when we talk about safety, the fact that you have an on-off switch is, I
Yep.
mean, it's every firefighter's dream because it's super fire safe.
Hmm.
You don't just plug something in with risk of sparks coming out and setting the whole thing ablaze. You have on and off. You have the three. It
Hmm.
goes in nice and efficiently. It doesn't break. So the plug sockets and Cyprus in general. Cyprus for me is like Florida without some American problems and no humidity. That's what Cyprus is like. It's a bit of a weird way to
And no
describe
humidity?
it,
Oh, that
but
sounds like heaven.
yeah, no humidity, but it's very dry. So that's like the other side of it. So there's no tropical rainforest or anything like that, no jungles, no crocodiles. But it's also quite difficult, according to the locals, to grow food there because it doesn't rain a lot at all. So that's the other side of
Hmm.
it that you do
No
get. Well,
hurricanes
it's
either.
yeah, no hurricanes. Well, I don't think any country in the Mediterranean has hurricanes apart from
Exactly.
uh, Libya might have had one years ago, but I couldn't tell you. That might have been actually just a
Oh,
typhoon
that's surprising.
or a tornado. I couldn't tell you. But Mediterranean lifestyle for me, I'm
Probably.
sure you're the same. If you are fond of Italy, Spain, and Portugal, though Portugal technically isn't on the Mediterranean, but are you the same in the sense that you like that Mediterranean lifestyle?
I do. I do like a more of a relaxed lifestyle. I also like the Mediterranean foods. There's food in Spain, the food in Italy, absolutely awesome. And I never been to Greece, but there's many Greek immigrants that go to Germany, and every time I go to a Greek cafe, oh, I'm always very happy. It's the moussaka. If you ever have that in a Greek cafe in Europe, they make it the right way. It's the real McCoy. So I've always been very happy, always very welcoming, and if they start to get to know me, they give me hugs and kisses, and they really make you feel like at home when you go to the Mediterranean countries. Of course, there's disadvantages with that. When you're thinking about taxes, well, in Italy and Greece at least, that is a sensitive subject, and of course, with the Italian bureaucracy, I mean, I had a front row seat with that, man.
Yeah, well, yeah, to be honest, Italy is one of those. Spain could be as well. Portugal, not necessarily. Cyprus and Greece, I couldn't tell you, but I don't think Cyprus is too heavily reliant on taxes because a lot of companies are headquartered in Cyprus. If you actually look, so it's actually surprising
True.
how many big companies are headquartered in Cyprus and from many different realms. So it's kind of unbelievable. Portugal, same principle. A lot of expats there. Malta as well. Maltese is the only Semitic language in Europe. So that's
Yeah,
very interesting.
I
But
had a
Malta
Maltese
too.
friend and I thought he was speaking Arabic.
Yeah, well, there you go. I mean, that is it's like a weird dialect between Arabic and Italian. Kind of like Swahili in
Yes.
Kenya and Tanzania, where you go, okay, is this Arabic? But it's also like a African dialect. Doesn't make any. It's just super weird. But the history with that, with the Sultanate of Oman going to Tanzania, I think, and making the Swahili language is incredible. But even with Malta as well, the only issue I would have with Malta is that it's so small. I feel like you'd get bored and run out of things pretty quickly to do.
That's a fair point, maybe. I mean, here in the US, I think there's a ton of things to do over here, but the thing is, it's so unbelievably spread out. We had a tourism campaign for years, the visit the United States. It's all within your reach. And I'm like, that is the stupidest campaign I've ever heard because I mean it's so spread out. I mean, even from New York, you know how far you have to travel to go to a national park?
Well, that's so true, and
At
it's
least a
like,
six-hour
but
drive.
well, or even if you're going further, like technically, New York and Hawaii are the same country, but they're not. They don't.
11
I can't
hours.
imagine they
An
feel
11-hour
like.
flight direct.
Well, there you go, and I can't imagine it feels like the same country apart from perhaps the standard American accent and the language. But that's technically the same country, but it's on the complete other side of the planet. It's very much behind time zone wise. Maybe 3 or 4, maybe even 5 hours, depending on the seasons. But
I
it's the
gotta
same
think, five
country.
hours behind. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
well,
we have six time zones in America. Everybody says it's four, but it's six. We have the four in the continental United States, the contiguous United States,
yeah,
plus Alaska, they have their own time zone, and then plus Hawaii.
Yeah, and then you take a state like Arizona, which has their own. They have a territory within the state that's an hour ahead of Arizona in general. So, I don't know why that is. That's kind of a bit like North Korea being half an hour ahead of China for no reason whatsoever. So that's kind of, or
Oh, that's
China just
interesting.
having one time zone. So that which is unbelievable to think that all the way on the border with Tajikistan is the same time as Hong Kong. It just that doesn't make sense to me at all because then the
I
sun
know, and
is
China is similar size to the United States. That's
yeah.
insane. So people could be waking up in the morning, 8 o'clock, 8:30 or something like that in the summer, and it could still be dark.
Yeah, it could still be dark. Yeah, absolutely. And technically, if you cross the border from Tajikistan, you're going what, like 3 hours ahead just by hopping over a drawn line on some land. Like it's
Yeah.
just weird, like how that whole thing works. But Vic, you've mentioned that you work in embassies and consulates. I'm curious because you see this argument a lot, especially recently. Now that you're a dual citizen, do you have any issues working in national embassies and in consulates because people argue, oh, security risk, allegiance to Italy in your example, or do they allow dual nationality in your workplace?
In my workplace, I don't need any clearance of any sort. But if you had to have secret clearance, and then there's secret clearance, and then there's top secret clearance, and then there's top secret SCI, which is even beyond top secret clearance. Um, Even like those type, I actually would not be able to work in those type of situations. I wouldn't be able to have that type of clearance. I had a boss, have a boss still. She's still my boss. She had Serbian citizenship. She was born in Serbia, and she was a dual citizen for years. But she applied to obtain secret clearance, and she had to renounce her Serbian citizenship. She could not be a
Oh
dual
wow!
citizen. Yeah. So, and
Oh
that's just
wow!
secret clearance. So, never mind when you're applying for top secret clearance, top secret SCI, and there's even clearances on top of that where I forgot what the highest one is, but it's some code word, but that is when you're actually interacting with the president directly in person. That's a secret clearance like above and beyond the usual scale. So,
And
you wouldn't be able to have some type of a clearance. But interestingly, members of Congress are able to have dual citizenship. There's no limit, and members of Congress can shake the president's hand casually.
well, that actually leads me on to my next point: is what do you think about that? Because for me, any even a country saying renounce your citizenship if you want our citizenship is crazy enough. Take a country like Estonia that does that. But what
Austria
do
too.
you agree with that? Do you agree with that policy where they don't allow dual nationality, or do you not agree with that? I guess is what I'm asking.
No, I completely disagree with that, honestly, because if you have, like in the United States, I mean, our security and the way that the extensive background checks that we're able to do with the technology that we have, with the military industrial complex that we can, we have the ability to investigate great grandparents all the way back, like if they participated in a communist revolution in a foreign country. We really have that capability. I'm not kidding. I know people who got rejected for visas coming into the United States because their father participated in a communist revolution in Peru or something like that. Yeah, actually, it was in Peru. But I think, just to make a complete blanket statement, no, you can't have dual citizenship because you're a security risk. I don't think so. I don't know. Maybe if it's North Korea, maybe I'm not sure. But for maybe 99% of the cases, no, absolutely not. It's completely antiquated, and I think that this is just out of old habit because we started seeing you were able to have dual citizenship, in Italy in 1992, and other countries have allowed that. And I think maybe more countries are opening to that as well. Germany recently opened that last year or so. Um, and we are in the right direction because honestly, man, this world is shrinking ever so much. It's shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. People are traveling a lot more. I was just in continental Europe back in May, and No, I'm sorry. That was in the UK, but the year before that, I travel so much, I'm mixing it up. But everybody, you see, the people under the age of 30, they're wearing the same outfits. They're wearing the same fashion as us in the United States. They're even wanking. They're even, excuse me, they're even wearing Yankees hats.
Yeah, very poor slip of words there. That was an unfortunate slip of words. That was very unfortunate.
Wearing
Although,
Yankees hats.
yeah. Well, I mean, if you to be honest, if you ever do see that in public, I think it's everyone's duty to call the cops if you see them doing what you slipped up on saying out in public, because I do believe that is illegal everywhere. So I'm just saying that now. But yeah,
Absolutely, yeah. Indecency laws are, yeah.
yeah, certainly,
Wearing
especially in
Yankee
Europe
hats
where
in
they
public,
do.
and we're all wearing the same things. That's what I'm trying to say. Everybody's wearing the same things. Like I remember 20 years ago, Europeans would be wearing, even the English, they would be wearing these skinny jeans that would be like so tight on them they looked like that they were painted on, and Americans would be wearing a little bit more of a relaxed fit. Now everybody's wearing basically more of a little bit of a looser fit clothes, looser fit pants, especially the girls. And I'm seeing the same thing here in the U.S. I'm seeing the same thing in Australia. Uh, Everybody's wearing the same thing. You used to go to different countries and they'd be wearing different shoes. Now everybody's wearing the same thing. So what I'm trying to say is what I'm getting at is we're becoming a more uh, the world is shrinking. We're starting to become more of a global community. So having allowing people not to have dual citizenship or tri-citizenship or whatever just because that there's a security risk. I'm sorry, but there's completely different avenues to investigate somebody's background to really make sure that they are not a security risk. I have global entry. I have express entry that I applied for. They did. I'm a low risk traveler, right? That's what I'm
Yeah.
trying to say. So I can go into the express security line going through U.S. immigration. They already have everything about me. Why couldn't they allow me to have dual citizenship? I mean, they do, but the infrastructure is already there in so many different countries. And don't even get me
Well, it's
started about the Five Eyes program.
yeah. Well, that as well. The Five Eyes is something that I was going to bring up, but it's also that thing of. I mean, I guess I could understand it if you're, let's say you're doing like a top level security job. I could perhaps understand it then because let's say let's say you had American and Mongolian citizenship, which technically isn't
Iranian
possible, but
citizenship.
yeah, okay, American Italian, but well, no, because then they're technically good friends with each other. So let's say you had
No, I said
American.
Iranian.
Oh, Iranian. Okay, yeah. So, American Iranian citizenship. I could understand it if the risk was that you steal a bunch of documents, you give it to Iran, you leave, you technically defect back to Iran. They don't extradite their
Hmm.
own, so they'll never be able to get you. I can understand that argument for it, but for me, it also goes about the
Yeah, I
person
do too.
and the ideas, because this whole thing of oh, it should be you should be a natural born citizen to be president and what have you. Well, what if the naturalized citizen has better ideas, right? What if the naturalized citizen is the one who is like they do what you agree with? What should they not be allowed to, even if their ideas are better? I'm all fine with them being citizens. That ain't an issue.
Mhm.
But I can understand on one hand, where let's say you were to leak something and then defect to another country where they don't extradite you because you're a citizen. That's fine. But for me, also, I think that dual citizens, people who are passport collectors, people who diversify themselves in passports, they aren't really the type of people who are extremely loyal to a country or hugely patriotic, at least not in my experience. I'm not loyal
Uh,
to any
well
country that
put.
I've lived in or have a passport in. I don't care. I'm loyal. I'm kind of loyal to my own goals. Whatever country I can achieve those in, that's where I'll go. So for me, it's not about
Right.
a country or a nationality or a idea of nationalism. It's about, okay, where can I be the best person possible? Where can I achieve the most? Where can I be happy? Where can I go where I'm treated best, as some people like to quote it? So for me, it's
Moment
all
of
that.
capital is
And
Andrew Henderson.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, yeah, yeah. He's an interesting guy behind the scenes. You hear a lot of good stuff about him, a lot of bad stuff about him. I don't personally know what's true and what's false. So whenever people tell me stuff about those type of channels, I just go, yeah, sure, seems like a fairly nice guy, though I've never personally used his services. I'm not in need of them yet. But, just for me, that is the most important thing. And this whole idea of, I don't know, what do you think, Vic? You're a dual citizen yourself. You might be the type of person who might get more citizenships in the future. Are you really that patriotic to one country over the other, or do you just like to, live your happy life?
I think I really like to live my happy life, honestly. I really enjoy exploring the world. I like the beaches just as much as I love the mountains. I love
Yeah.
Italian food just as much as I love, uh, you know, the food in the Netherlands, honestly. Their fish and chips over there is absolutely like goated, ungodly, if you've ever had it. And I think I really see myself as a global citizen. I really try to see myself because like I said before, the world is becoming smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. More and more people are traveling. I've been to 30 countries, but yet that used to be very impressive back in the 90s. That was like bragging rights. Now that's starting to become, you talk to Europeans, that's small potatoes.
Yeah. Well, there are more than 30 countries in Europe, so I guess that might be the reason why. Where it's like, especially if you live on especially if you live close to many international borders. You go to Luxembourg one day, you go to Belgium the other day, you go to Germany the day after
Right.
that. All right, cool. Yeah, you've been to three countries already. You hop over to the Netherlands, so I guess it's just different. But I
Unlike in the
guess
United States,
Americans.
we have Canada on top of us, and then we have Mexico. We're far away from everybody. You have to take a pretty, unless you go like through the small Caribbean countries on a
Yeah.
cruise or something like that.
Yeah, but then also that is the one thing with America as a country that it has it as a huge advantage, is that if someone from Finland wants to go to a Mediterranean climate tropical beach, they have to fly to Greece or Cyprus or Italy. But if American wants to do
Right.
that and they're from Wyoming, they could fly to Florida if they want to go to the east, or Hawaii if they want to go to the west. So they could do
Hmm.
that, and it's technically domestic. Whereas Europeans, they have to
And all
go
speak the same
internationally.
language.
Well,
Yeah.
exactly. That's another major benefit. So that is a huge privilege with America as a country, geographically speaking, is that you have everything. You are completely diversified. The country is completely diversified. Whereas Finland doesn't have any tropical beaches. Greece Greece has snow-topped mountains, so I guess that's not a perfect example to use. Malta doesn't have any mountains. If you're Maltese and you want to go skiing, you can't
Yeah.
stay in Salema. You have to go to Italy or Switzerland or anywhere that does have mountains.
Yeah.
So that is the
I
major
typically
difference,
would
I
go to
think,
Italy, I think.
personally.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, I'm curious, Vic. You've mentioned 30 countries. I still maintain that's a very good list. Hell, even two countries is something to brag about because you have gone internationally. Then technically, even if you've just jumped over a border a couple times, like me when I went to Slovakia because I went to the border, jumped over it, took a picture, and then jumped back. So I have been to Slovakia. I actually have been to a big city in Slovakia before, but after I went back technically,
If you
just
put your foot on the
jumping.
country, if you put it on the soil, it counts. Even if
It
you're
does count,
transiting,
yeah.
I mean, you put your foot in the country, it counts.
It does count, absolutely. I'm curious. Do you have any country that you haven't visited yet that you'd love to visit in the future?
Countries that I haven't visited. Oh my God, I don't even know where to start. I think Portugal would probably be on the top of my list. Um, I also would like to go to South America, like to the Patagonia area, which
Yep.
is either in Chile or Argentina, one of the two. Probably Chile, I think. I mean that scenery is gorgeous. Of course, South Korea as well. I heard the food scene is absolutely awesome, and it's a good time. A lot of people say they have a lot of fun over there. The food is great. It's greatly underrated. Of course, Hong Kong, New Zealand. I can
Yep.
go
New
on.
Zealand.
I also want
Yeah,
to do a
New Zealand.
safari in
Yeah.
Kenya as well.
Well, there you go. I mean, who said you only have to go to one place forever? No, you can go to many. New Zealand is actually quite similar to America, I think, where you have a lot of different type of climate zones. I don't know if you necessarily have tropical beaches like Hawaii. You might get that more in Australia, but New Zealand, you have the mountains, but
Yeah.
you also have the nice blue water beaches. You have the nice high-rise building cities. You also have the rural areas. We take Invercargill on South Island that no one goes to. So you have everything there as well. So it's kind of similar. And also, I like the. For me, it's technically part of the UK, but I don't. You don't have right of abode there. But I would check out the Pitcairn
Part of the
Islands.
Commonwealth. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But I'd check out the Pitcairn Islands as well, which is technically British overseas territory, but amazing history if you're familiar with the mutiny on the Bounty and all of that good history.
Yeah, that's true. But I also even want to go to Antarctica actually. But of course, that's a project to get down there because you would have to, at least from New York, you would have to fly down to Buenos Aires and then you would go to Ushuaia all the way down, and then you would take like a cruise. You have to go to the Drake Passage, and that's like some of the roughest waters in the world. I heard they call that Drake Shake. But I really would like to see the seals and the penguins, and because there's no natural predators over there, they come up to you. It's you that is the wild animal.
It absolutely is, and for me, it wouldn't be Antarctica, which would be the most exotic place. And you would, everyone who has gone there since 1991 has died by going there, whether on purpose or by accident. But if I could get guarantees that I would survive it, I would so go to North Sentinel Island in the Indian Ocean and meet the
Oh,
tribes
I don't
there.
know
Like
that one.
so,
Oh,
North Sentinel
there.
Island,
Oh,
yeah, yeah. So like, if I could get security guarantees that I would survive that visit, you best believe that I'm going there. I'm listening to the language. How are they communicating with each other? Teaching them English, getting them to subscribe to this YouTube channel. I'm doing all of that good stuff. So North Sentinel Island would definitely be the top of my list if I would survive and if I could bypass the Indian Navy and if they'd allow me to go through their exclusion zone.
you're more adventurous than I am, I gotta say.
Well, I don't know how possible it is, but if you're ever on the news and you see a white guy with a big beard on North Sentinel Island, just know that chances are that I made it, especially if I haven't uploaded for a
Oh,
while. If those two things happen, then that's like 99% me, 100 like that 99% chance it's me. If the YouTube channel's dead, I haven't uploaded in a while, you haven't heard from me on Instagram or anything, and there's a white guy with a big beard on North Sentinel Island, uh, yeah, probably me to be honest. So, but I tell that to
yeah.
everyone
How
just
much
in
longer
case
you'll
that
be
ever
alive, I
happens.
don't know.
No,
How much
neither do
longer
I.
you'll be alive, I don't know, but we'll make sure your funeral arrangements are planned accordingly. Cremated or buried?
As long as they subscribe to the channel, to be honest. So, like that's the that's the primary thing. Just subscribe to the channel. Like, chances are I wouldn't. Oh, actually, if I could get Starlink on North Sentinel Island, I'd upload videos there talking about. Right, so this is why the Canadian passport is actually very good. And then I could be the first one to get Sentinelese citizenship. So I'm going to start looking into this. Get maybe booking some flights to the Andaman and Nicobar Islands very
Oh
soon.
my gosh, they even have their own citizenship. I didn't even know that.
No, well, they don't. They're an uncontacted tribe, but I could convince them to
Ah,
make a passport. You know, I think they're still technically living in Stone Age standards or Iron Age because they technically do have iron now. But it only takes one good diplomat to change things. So I guess that'll be my goals for the future. Vic, I'm curious, just as a final question, which I like to ask, not on this podcast per se, but on my other ones. You're a well-travelled man. You speak a lot of languages. You have another passport, so you've pretty much got life secured already, in my opinion. But what is the meaning of life?
I think the meaning of life is to find your own meaning. Honestly, it's individual to everybody, but I think we only have one life. We're, and this is a gift, and I think to enjoy it sensibly um, is really the meaning of it, honestly. So, how do I enjoy my life? Learning, um, having good conversation, learning new things, meeting new people, exploring new places, having amazing food, trying different languages, and I think seeing what you're capable of.
And there we have it. That was in his own words. To be honest, I agree with that, but I also think there is one meaning of life that you have missed out on, and that would be for anyone who has made it this far to subscribe to the channel. That is the meaning of life. I am confirming it right here, right now. So if you have made it this far, crucial meaning of life is for you to subscribe to this channel. Vic, it was an awesome chat. I always love it when people reach out to me on Instagram. I'm always kind of blown away by it because it's still such a small YouTube channel, but when people do, I'm kind of like, oh wow, that's kind of crazy. So yeah, it was an awesome chat. Hopefully it provided value. Yeah, well, yeah, we evidently do, and not just with Citizenship, but also with Alan Walker and Morcat Dummer by the looks of it. So it goes even beyond that. So definitely a good one, and a very good conversation that even goes beyond the ideas of citizenship.